You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
I was born ready, but then I had a relapse.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great.
So you dutifully went ahead and repeated something so that I could get it on mic, and I appreciate it.
Something inane, banal.
But it was funny.
Yeah. Well,
so
it was true.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
I know that one of the things that you have said to me recently is that you would like for us to try and be sharper and more laser focused. So I'm going to make an effort to do that, try and land these in 20 or 25 minutes and not do as much of the tangential kind of stuff.
Free association.
Yeah. So to start, though, I do want to say...
I'll be intrigued by your ability.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see if it manifests.
We'll see. I do want to encourage everybody, if you listen to the show, if you enjoy the show, please, please, please go to michaelmahan.org, which is my new revamped website, and look around. Let me know what you think. Give me some feedback on if you like it, if you don't like it, if there's something that you would like to see differently. What I'm trying to do is create some spaces that are usable for people. So I want to do the same thing with a new Psych with Mike site, and this is my first endeavor. So I would like for people to just go there and check it out and let me know what they think. No, nothing?
Nothing?
Oh, okay.
I've already seen it.
I know you've given me good feedback, so I appreciate that. And now I want to expand that to
and we get some
other people.
Real feedback.
Some real feedback, okay. Right? Yeah, but obviously, be nice.
Gentle.
Don't. Yeah.
You have such thin skin. You're so fragile.
And it's here I go bloviating when I said I wasn't going to. But
it doesn't take much.
People say all the time, "Wow, you can be really intimidating. You don't really understand how you can come across." And I'm like, well, I live with a 110-pound blonde woman that I don't think feels that way. B, I think I'm really sensitive.
So, I would agree with you about your
sensitivity,
perception of your wife. I think she is not intimidated. I think she may think you're stupid, but not intimidating.
Yeah. So that's why I would ask people to be gentle.
Yeah. Oh, then I shouldn't have said that.
No, I think that I'm okay with harsh criticism because I recognize
because you get so much of it.
Well, if you talk to 100 people, you could get 98 positives.
Albert Ellis said that, yeah.
And 2 negatives, and then you're only going to focus on the negatives. So I really try and understand that and not take that to heart. But at the same time, I put a lot of effort into things that I do, and then if that gets just absolutely destroyed, then I am like, oh, well, I feel bad. I worked really hard on that.
So I thought we were going to start talking about Urie Bronfenbrenner's theories, but it sounds like you're talking about how to stop caring about what people say about you, which is another topic we were going to do.
You know what? Actually, that is
segue into that.
That is a great segue. Yes, we could just do that instead.
Okay.
So, actually, I hadn't even made that connection, so I'm really glad that you...
Well, see, I'm a professional.
You are a professional.
And I make those connections. I look for patterns. And my pattern was, censor was saying, what the hell is he talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then I thought, it must be this other topic.
So I feel like that we either tangentially or directly talk about this topic a lot, but I don't think there's any way to talk about this topic too much.
I think it's problematic when we try to, with the training that we have, the training focuses on patterning and how to understand patterns within which people live and by which they see themselves and experience those around them. so that we can make sense out of it when someone comes to us and says, I'm in trouble, I hurt, I'm angry, I'm sad, and it's interfering with my ability to function. I'm not living the life I want to live. Can you help me? In order to be of service, we have to listen accurately and reflect that back to them carefully, but in the framework of some kind of a pattern. So each of us has a responsibility, providers, to have a perspective by which we understand how people normally live. And there's a million theories out there, and you have to kind of pick the one, just like there's a million religions, you have to pick the one that comforts you and fits for you and your work style. And we are not, we don't serve every member of every audience. People find us because they have a relationship, they are able to make a relationship with us where they feel comfortable and they can take a lot, if not most, of their masks off in our presence and allow us to experience them genuinely. We have to facilitate that, and we have to feed that back to them and help identify where the leakages are that cause them difficulty.
So then let me ask you something. When you started, so we were talking about how do you get to a point where you can care less about what other people think. And you had started by saying people look for patterns, and that triggered something in me. Are you then saying that you think that it is a part of the reason why we care about what other people think is because we are searching for patterns? Because I'd never made that connection before, but that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
I think we care about what other people think because we have been propagandized and trained our entire life. I mean, from the first days of our life, even pre-verbal, we recognize the availability, the warmth and the loving attention, or the unavailability, the coldness, the absence of warmth and loving attention from the object, from the mother figure that we have in our lives, which doesn't have to be the biological mother, but that's what psychologists call the object. And we start to edit ourselves and structure ourselves to seduce the warm, loving mother's presence and to avoid the cold, negative mother's presence. So we begin with our very earliest awareness in life to start to develop filters that make us conscious of how people perceive us, and that becomes integral to who we are, and it's always there. Now, as you develop an intellect and you develop a vocabulary to support that intellect, then you can start trying to modify the way you present yourself to different audiences and how much of that you bring home to your sense of self. I mean, I can go put on a performance at a class that I'm teaching, and I can go home and dismiss it and say, you know, that's 15 or 20 people that are required to pay attention to me. They may or may not like what I have to say, like who I am, but they have to be respectful. And then I can have next door neighbors that I look at and say, well, I don't really care about them. They're not people in my lives. They just live next door to me. So I don't care if they are upset that my garbage can doesn't have a lid, or that my dog barks occasionally. Or I can be concerned about that and say, well, you know, I want those people to respect me and think I'm a decent guy. So I'm going to keep my grass cut the way they keep theirs cut. I'm going to have flowers planted like they do so that the yards all look similar to one another. I mean, it's just that kind of editing process we do instinctively, but also consciously.
So what I tell people is that we, when we are born, suffer from what Piaget called egocentrism, so the inability to recognize that the outside world has views
Grandiose
and beliefs
narcissism
that are different than ours, and that can continue to persist throughout our lifetime. But now I'm seeing actually both of those things work together. So if you're born egocentric and then you're trained to pay attention to what the object desires and finds desirable, and so then we live our lives in that way, trying to elicit that attention from people who are important to us, then that's going to create a situation where we are going to be beholden to what other people think.
So my terminology for that is grandiose narcissism.
Okay.
When we are born, our perception is the universe is us, and all the elements in the universe exist to serve or attend to us. As we mature and evolve, we learn there are others in the universe who think the same thing. And we can't all be correct. So we have to learn to take turns. We have to learn to share. We have to learn to modify our expectations. So we lose the grandiosity, although we still keep some of the narcissism. So what I used to tell clients all the time is every single thing that you do is in service of the self. The question is how to understand it. How do you understand the dynamic that you're creating when you smart off to your boss so that he fires you, instead of you're saying, you know what, I don't like this job anymore, I'm going to quit, and take the responsibility for being jobless. And so you find a subtle way to get yourself jobless without owning it.
Yeah, you could smart off to the boss. So unconsciously, you want to be not working at this job. But the way that you then act that out is that you smart off to the boss.
The tools that I have available to me.
They fire you, then you go home and tell your wife, well, it wasn't my fault.
I got fired, yeah. I remember the first time I ever got fired in my life. I was in college and working at a grocery store called the Mad Butcher. It's a small chain of grocery stores in Conway, Arkansas.
It's a little scary.
And the manager of my store was
Were there any dogs around?
Yeah. For a little while. Yeah. They disappeared pretty. The manager of my store was a relative of the owners of the chain. He had not graduated from high school. He did not respect education. He did not respect people who were getting an education, but he hired a lot of us as hourly wage workers because we had to staff the store. But he liked to hire high school kids. But I got a job there. And so he would assign me every Saturday from like 6 in the morning to 10 at night to work. Because I had classes during the week. I wanted so many hours a week. I mean, it all worked out. But at the end of the day, on Saturday night at 10 o'clock, when I'd been there all that many hours, then he would require me to stay and mop the floors and send all the high school kids home because they wanted to go play poker and have drinks and hang out. A time came when I wanted the weekend off, and I asked him if I could have it, and he said no. And so I said, I'm smarter than he is. I'll just wait until Friday, and I'll call in sick. So I called the office and said, I have the 24-hour flu. I'll be in 24 hours, or 48 hours, or whatever it was. So I came in on Monday, and my time card was missing. So I went to the office and said, where's my time card? I'm scheduled to work. And they said, no, you've been fired. You're gone. So I realized I handled that poorly because I was rubbing his nose in the fact that I was smarter than he was. And even though I still believe I was smarter than he was, what I learned is I need to display that differently if I don't want to have negative consequences. If I don't care, it doesn't make any difference.
Right. Okay, let's take our break and we'll come back and we'll pick that up on the other side. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them, listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. When we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. So I guess in the story that you tell about the grocery store experience, what I'm wondering is, how do you think, because I hear you telling this, and basically I hear you say, okay, on a Friday night I called in, but you also were very aware that there was a motivation that you were smarter than him. Do you think you telegraph that in some way? How do you think?
I must. People respond to me that way somewhat regularly, like, you're a smart ass. And I just smile and say, yeah, I am. But I hope I have learned in my 74 years to be more selective about revealing that to selected audiences. I don't mind being that way with my friends that I know like me, but I I'm a little more cautious about being that way in front of an audience that I don't know.
So one of the things, and this would actually go in contrast to what I'm going to say, and we can come back to that. But one of the things that I tell clients is, especially adolescent clients, if a client comes to me and says, oh, I was really, really worried that I had a blemish, and so now I can't go to school because everybody will see my blemish and they'll all be so worried about it. And I say to them, look, everybody at your school is just as egocentric as you are. They're only worried about whether their hair looks good that day, not whether or not you have a blemish. And so nobody's ever going to notice that. And when you recognize that nobody really is paying attention to you, that's like the first thing on the list of the article. You have to come to a conclusion that nobody cares.
I disagree.
You disagree with that?
I disagree. Because I think that in high school, social groupings are critical to your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And that kids are always acutely aware of which group you need to be placed in, whether you're with the motorheads, the gear jammers, the jocks, the intellects, the dweebs, whatever category names they have. It's kind of like I was reading an article this morning from Delancey Place about the tapping program at Yale University, where they select them for skull and bones and stuff, and how for over 100 years that's been the critical day in a young man's junior year, where for 3 years he's tried to be seductive to the group that he wants to choose him, so that they will look at the crowd of juniors and say, well, this guy, because we have to pick 15 out of the crowd, we want this one. And then there are other groups. And I remember when I was in college, I went through pledging for fraternities. Yeah. There were half a dozen different fraternities, and you go around to pledge opportunities, little parties, whatever, and meet these people. And then you hope that you get an invitation from one of them to pledge their fraternity. And if you get the invitation, or if you get several invitations, you have to choose which one you're going to take. And then you have to go through a whole regimen of time where you meet the members and try to seduce them into saying, we want this guy to be in our club. And so you have to put yourself out there. Well, I think people are always aware of those kinds of things. And if you go back and read The Status Seekers by Vance Packard, which came out in the 1960s, he talks about how tennis shoes, cars, breakfast cereals, TV shows, whatever you consume or try to consume is a marker by which your status is identified.
Well,
and
sure.
we constantly display that. So we try
marketing wouldn't be a thing if that wasn't true.
But we try to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And so our consciousness is, where do I fit? Where do I fit? Do they see where I fit? Can I pretend to fit somewhere that I don't fit? Like, can I join the country club and go on the weekends and play golf, but live at home with just bologna in the fridge? If I don't ever invite anybody over, will they think I'm classy and wealthy, or will they think I'm a charlatan and a fake? And that matters to us, the clothes we buy. How do you dress? I mean, look at how you're dressed, look at how I'm dressed. What message are we sending? And within regimented groups, like a high school class, there are only so many options. And so even the rebels all look alike. They all wear black or paint their nails black. And I remember in teaching high school in the early 70s, the ones that were war protesters would wear army jackets with peace signs on them.
Right.
And they'd wear peace medallions and headbands and let their hair grow long.
Right.
And they were different from the jocks who had their hair short and wore their leather jacket.
Right.
And that's just the guys. And the girls are even more incredible.
So I just want to say, for the record, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm wearing a very nice dry fit Star Wars shirt, and you're wearing a very nice pullover. So it's not that we're not dressed well. I'm just advertising that I like Star Wars.
No, you're advertising more than that. But that's okay. I mean, that's one of the messages you're sending is, hey, look at me, I like Star Wars. And that gives people a whole package of how they're supposed to understand you and define you.
But my question is, the question that I want to ask is, so do you think that is this idea of we're all integrally aware that we're in a competition for placement?
Yes.
That is that a positive or a negative?
It just is.
It just
I think
is.
it depends on what you do with it. It can be a positive experience. It can be a motivating, driving force. It gives you a discipline and a power to achieve something. Like, I want to get my PhD, so I fit in that community, and it gives me credibility because I say, well, I'm Dr. Mahan. Or does it work to your deficit? Do you get yourself in trouble because you're a smart ass and you get fired because you can't control your mouth? I mean, it just depends on what you do with it.
So, but people will come to us,
Yeah.
and they will say, "Okay, I'm consumed with this idea of what other people think of me." So there can come a point in time in an individual's life where that becomes maladaptive or unhealthy.
But there are also societal definitions and roles. Masculinity. Josh Hawley's worried that the prevalence of women in the marketplace now, out working jobs and being bosses, is taking away our masculinity, and we're spending more time at home watching pornography and masturbating than we are out being men in the world.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, he's a Republican senator in the United States Senate, and this is what he is saying. But men, in my experience, are acculturated to be competitive in more visible ways, more physical ways than women have been. Women are also acculturated to be competitive, to develop that competitive drive, to achieve a goal, to accomplish a status, to accomplish something that they do. But they're not physically competitive in a machismo kind of way, go into the bar and puff your chest out and say, stand back, I'm the biggest, SOB in the room. Or the toughest one, and I can take you on. And we both know a lot of men whose initial presentation is to puff out their chest and square their shoulders and stand tall and say, I'm really tough. I may have an intellect, I may have an education, I may have a responsibility, I may have a drive, but first of all, you got to be aware of the fact that I'm the biggest SOB in the valley.
But you agree that there can come a time where your concern over what other people think of you is not healthy for that individual.
Yes.
And so then,
absolutely.
So then, how do you approach that with that person to say, hey,
you have to do the counseling piece of it. You have to say, okay, here's the pattern that I see operating in your life.
Actually, that's really good.
How is that working for you? Are you getting the results that you want? Are you getting the reaction that you want? If you're not, is it possible that you could present yourself differently and get different reactions? And are you willing to try? And if you're not willing to try, then I can commiserate with you just so much to say, yeah, life is tough. That sucks. You got a bad deal. You're ugly. I'm not. You are. What can you do about that? Plastic surgery, lose weight, bulk up. And I'm being facetious, but what can you do to change the way other people experience you and the way you present yourself?
Right.
And would that bring you closer to what you want?
And we've had conversations about this in the past on the show, but also just recently in life about the help-rejecting complainer who comes and says, this isn't working
you
for
don't
me,
understand.
This isn't working for me, but then won't do anything to try and change it. And so if you're doing therapy with somebody who is a help-rejecting complainer, it is important to recognize that and not follow them down that rabbit hole.
No, the recommended strategy, if you're a therapist and you're working with a help-rejecting complainer, is to buy into their rejection. Yeah, that's probably not an answer. You're probably going to have to live this way. There's probably not anything that you can do.
Or
it really sucks to be you.
I've given you 5 different alternatives.
No, you don't say that.
No, but you say, I wonder, well, you may not say, I've given you 5, but you say, I wonder from your perception what you think might be helpful. And to try and put the onus,
I'm trapped.
Right, and then you have to say,
you are.
Well, then
you're screwed.
I don't know where to go with that.
Sucks to be you. But you say that with compassion. You say that with empathy. From what I'm hearing, you're in a place where it really sucks to be you.
Yeah.
How are we going to get you through this?
I would say you say it from a place of genuineness.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you are genuine by saying, "Wow, that really is painful for me," and I'm really torn up about hearing you say that, that would be genuine for one person.
I would say that's not how I experience you.
Yeah.
That's obviously how you experience you and your circumstances. I don't, but I have to hear that that's where you are. So again, my question is, how do we get you through this? Do you just keep breathing until it changes, or can you take little steps?
So I guess I've always been of the persuasion that it is my role, my goal, to try and minimize the amount that people care about what others think, because I want them to be more invested in honoring what they think. I'm hearing you say that you actually think there is a positive value associated with...
Well, I think there can be.
Okay.
I think it's what you have the data and the tools. It's what you do with them. So can we harness your awareness of these concerns in a positive, disciplined way for you?
But you certainly don't see this,
or you're just a victim.
That situation as maladaptive or unhealthy as maybe I would characterize it. You actually would use it in therapy as a way of highlighting for the client an evaluation of, am I getting what I want by thinking this way?
Yeah.
And if not, then
And
let's
do I
talk
have other
about
options. If I don't have them, can I get them? Can I develop them? Is it a skill I can learn? Maybe if I learn to speak French, I could do something about that.
Well, you certainly would sound more suave.
And debonair.
Yeah.
So I think as a therapist, you have to reflect what your experience of them is and make sure that it's accurate. Am I understanding you? Am I hearing you? Is this what you're saying to me? Is this what your life is like? Then you can start to have a conversation when you're on that wavelength with them to say, what other options do we have? I believe in teaching clients about response ability as opposed to responsibility. And I will say to them, you are choosing certain elements of what's going on in your life. You may not think that you are, but I think that if we have this conversation, I can show you there's an element of choice.
Yeah.
And you can choose to go in a different direction, you go in a different room, present yourself differently, experience yourself differently. If your parents say, well, you're too stupid to go to college, and you really want to go to college, well, let's find out. Sign up for a course somewhere. Let's take one course.
Right.
It's not an all
Test
or
the
nothing.
hypothesis.
Yes, exactly. See what you do. See what you like.
So I think that's a good place to end this, although I will say, and I say this all the time, we are someday going to do a show exclusively on responsibility versus responsibility, because you say that a lot and we've never really fleshed that out. I think that would be a good thing to do.
That's a choice that
That's
you
a
make.
choice that I make.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who sends the
Yeah.
topics. All right. Please go to michaelmahan.org. Let me know what you think. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. We can be had on Twitter at Psych with Mike,
We can
on
be heard.
Facebook at Psych with Mike Found. And if you want to interact with us, you can get us at psychwithmike.com. And as always, if it's Friday,
I
it's
think
Psych
I've been
with Mike.
had. Yeah.